ਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
हेलो जी, वेलकम बैक। आज हम बात करेंगे एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट बंदे से, लेकिन उससे पहले हम आपको बता दें, आपको पता ही है कि ट्रम्प साहब आने वाले हैं और उसके लिए उन्होंने कहा है कि 25% वो टैरिफ्स कनाडा के ऊपर डाल देंगे। हालांकि बहुत ही बॉनहैमी है, हमारे बीच में प्यार मोहब्बत है, ब्रोमांस है कनाडा और यूएस के बीच में, लेकिन फिर भी बहुत सारा जो है इसके अंदर प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे हैं। जैसे कि आज डग फोर्ड साहब ने भी कहा कि 500,000 जॉब्स जा सकती हैं अगर ये टैरिफ्स लगा दिए गए, और उन्होंने एक फोर्ट्रेस एंड कैन जो है प्लान बनाया। इसके अलावा फेडरल लेवल के ऊपर भी जो एक 1.3 बिलियन डॉलर्स का प्लान बनाया गया है ताकि जो एतराज थे ट्रम्प साहब के उनके ऊपर काम किया जा सके, लेकिन फिर भी अभी तक कुछ पता नहीं है, क्योंकि आपको पता ही है कि ट्रम्प साहब तो मैवरिक हैं, वो तो कुछ भी कर सकते हैं। तो आज हमने स्पेशली रिक्वेस्ट की है डॉक्टर मार्क मेरोविट्स के साथ। ये हैं प्रोफेसर, स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ न्यूयॉर्क मैरीटाइम कॉलेज एंड पॉलिटिकल एनालिस्ट हैं, इसके अलावा लॉयर हैं, तो इनको जरा लीगल जो चीजें हैं वो समझ में आती हैं। वो हमारे साथ वी आर एक्सट्रीमली थैंकफुल एंड to Mr. Mark that he has very kindly joined us. Hello Mark, how are you? Hello?
Hi, I think we had a slight interruption in the connectivity.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps it was US-Canada relations.
Yes, absolutely. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm fine, thank you. And how about you?
Very well. Thank you very much. I was just saying we are extremely grateful that you could take time out from your busy schedule. I know you have been extremely busy, but still you have, joined us today, so we are thankful. Okay, to start with, I was just saying that not only the Ontario government, but at the federal level also, we have put in a plan, but still, what do you think? Because I was just saying that Mr. Trump is a maverick, so you can just expect anything, and then the new team that is coming in, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and then Mr. Waltz. So what do you have to say about his team, and what can be the expectations and predictions?
Well, I mean, I have high expectations, but you do have what you saw today, for example, at the hearings for Pete Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense, a very strong and negative approach by the Democrats on the Senate committee. So I think we're going to see a lot of pushback from the Democrats about all of the plans that Trump plans to initiate. Now, the truth is that the Republicans control the House of Representatives, the Senate, the presidency, and have a majority on the Supreme Court. But history shows us that you can't always get everything you want. Our government is divided, and I think that it is possible, for example, that Hegseth, as the team that you're talking about, might not be confirmed and approved, because the big issue today was Hegseth's statement that women are not qualified to be in combat, and that went on and on and on. You had a tremendous amount of pushback. You also had some personal issues. So about the team, I think Marco Rubio, very strong. Waltz, you mentioned. Mike Huckabee, Elise Stefanik at the UN, a very strong team that's going to follow Trump's policies, including his policy on immigration and what you were talking about in terms of Canada and in his plan to initiate tariffs, 25% tariffs. To me, that's not likely to ever happen. I think the threat of the tariffs had already a tremendous impact on Canada. It caused the fall of the Trudeau government. I mean, that's quite profound. So I think Canadians, it was kind of a wake-up call. I mean, we have a wake-up call in America, and there's a wake-up call in Canada. But the Canada-U.S. friendship is solid, and it's immutable, and that is not going to change. However, Trump's concern is always, what do I do about America's finances, our debt, the amount of money he talks about that is spent in defense of Canada. And of course, it's America's great desire to work with Canada, be in alliance with Canada. It's the most important alliance we have. So it's very complicated. He's a game changer, Trump, but the things he talks about are really important. And obviously the people in Canada are taking what he's saying very seriously, including the fact that he kind of showed that the Trudeau government was not functioning properly, and its economy in Canada was not what it should be, and it's clearly been on a downswing under Trudeau. So something needs to happen, and hopefully Canadian people will, get organized, and we have an election in March, or maybe not. I mean, at some point before October, and hopefully there will be an election, and the Canadians will pick another leader. I'm trying to pronounce the name of the Conservative candidate, and it's Pierre. It's Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre.
I mean, if Americans were voting for him, I don't think we would vote for him because we can't pronounce his name. But he has stated that he is a candidate for common sense, and you know what? As much as you drill down with all the policies and the minutiae, common sense will always get you ahead.
Well, we need to see that. Definitely, when we are on election trail, we talk about a lot of things, but when things come to actuality, then that's different. Yes, you have mentioned some a very important name, and that was Mr. Pete Hegseth's name. He's Secretary of Defense. But the most important person also is going to be the Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Canton Fitzgerald. So we have to see how our commerce and the trade and everything goes ahead with him. Yes, you are absolutely right, Mark, when you say that the economy is not doing good, thanks to Chrystia Freeland's good policies, financial policies, and that's why Trudeau wanted to bring in Mark Carney to take care of the finances, and she could still have been vice president. He actually wanted to give her the same file, the US-Canada file, to work on trade like she worked last time when Mr. Trump came in. Anyways, moving forward, like you said that you don't really see 25% tariffs being put on Canada. In case, let's just hope, in case 25% tariffs are put on Canada, how much loss do you see on both sides? Because both sides are very much dependent on energy and lumber and, timber and aluminum and steel and oil and gas. Because just yesterday, Alberta's premier was there in Mar-a-Lago, and she was meeting Mr. Trump, and she said that things were pretty easy. So what is your understanding, if at all this 25% tariff thing is pushed by the Trump government?
Well, looking at the article in The Economist on this, I'm trying to look at the number. The number is significant. I mean, as compared to, Canada's economy, it would hurt Canada's economy. But I think it's purely hypothetical. And as you say, you have a premier going down to see him. He's not, he doesn't treat Canada the way, he has attitude to adversaries. Canada's a friend. It's a close friend. He's trying to do something about this. And as far as the softwood lumber, I remember years ago I worked for a law firm and represented Canadian oil and gas companies in Vancouver, and they were very interested at the time in legislation that was Canadian legislation against the U.S. and U.S. legislation against Canada. It's not the first time that we've had a quid pro quo back and forth between Canada and the United States. The other dispute was about softwood lumber and the fact that Canada subsidizes softwood lumber. So there are a number of issues across the board. The other thing is, I think, interesting, as you mentioned, the premier, is that, you do have the different provinces with their own governments, and you've got a very, Ontario has traditionally been a very strong business province. Doug Ford, you have some very strong politicians, strong provincial governments. So it's not all as as blanket as Trump makes it out to be. There's a way to work this out, and I think that Trump often gives a big picture, and sometimes it's very negative. But he's looking to put the pieces together. I can't say I promise, but I'm really sure that this one is not going to come to fruition. Why do that? It's a bigger strategy. The strategy involves Canada. He talks about Greenland. We can talk about that too. It's quite important. And Panama. And the other thing I think is important, you mentioned Chrystia Freeland. I had a student some years ago teaching international relations course, and she talked about Chrystia Freeland all the time. I really was not familiar with her. You have a lot of competent people. In fact, Trudeau wanted to demote her. And you mentioned Mark Carney and Doug Ford, many others were very competent. So I think that Canada will get its ducks in a row and will work with the United States And, just like with Mexico, with, Claudia Sheinbaum, she right away went to Mar-a-Lago. She said, I'm going to, it's not that everybody has to do exactly what Trump wants, but at least a response. I also think that Trudeau proroguing the parliament until March 24th was extremely unfortunate. He just wants to rush to get a successor and get the Liberal Party back in there, but that's the problem. The Economist points out that the Liberal Party has been extremely weak and its support has crashed. So we need a reset in Canada. That's important also for the United States. So I think that I would say, rather than looking at the glass being half empty here, I think it's kind of half full in the sense that Canada and U.S. are working together. And you mentioned our new Secretary of Commerce. He's not an independent party. He's the head of a cabinet position working for the president, so that we would have a whole of government approach in dealing with our closest neighbor. And, there are a lot of issues. It's not just economic, it's also security and terrorism. And with that, the Canadians and Americans work together very, very closely. I work on a number of legal matters, as I mentioned. Canadian lawyers in Canada is a highly sophisticated and a really wonderful country. And the lawyers you have, I can say, were just fantastic. So, I'm going to be upbeat about this. I'm not going to be pessimistic about it. Okay. I think Canada is going to go in a good direction with the United States together, because we can't in America afford to have a squabble like this with Canada. We have so many challenges in the world, from China, from Russia, and in the Middle East, and you name it. We can't be, having protracted, deep disputes with our friends. We want to work with them, but not in an adversarial fashion. That's no point to it.
Like I said, Mr. Trump is a maverick, so he says, I don't want to be your ATM card anymore. That's what he's telling Canada. Anyways, you have mentioned now Greenland and Panama. So let's move towards this topic. He says that I'm going to make Canada my 51st state, and then he says I'm going to annex, this Greenland, and I'm also going to take control back of Panama Canal. Do you think all these things are happening, or maybe it's just his thinking? And but can those thoughts create any problems for those places?
Once again, I go to my favorite Economist magazine, which gave a little information on this. First of all, the United States acquired Louisiana, and Thomas Jefferson did it. And you know what? The Constitution didn't allow it. And then, in fact, that was kind of the joke that, Jefferson didn't want a strong federal government. There he goes, buying Louisiana, from the French. And as far as Alaska, when Seward bought it, they called it Seward's Folly. What a stupid idea to buy this Alaska over there. Turns out, Louisiana and Alaska are two so significant parts of America. Now about Greenland, that's very interesting. First of all, why Greenland? And it's an interesting thing about Trump that he brings things up like this. Number one, as the ice melts in the Arctic, more resources are becoming available, and also there is a strategic strip of the Atlantic Ocean which Russian submarines use, which if we acquired Greenland, we would be able to control. So this would push back against Russia and China. Now, the people of Greenland technically have the right to want to be independent. Indeed, what The Economist says, which I don't think I've read anywhere else, that if there were a deal for the United States to buy Greenland, it would not be with Denmark. It would be with the Greenlander people, and each person would get $1 million or more for the acquisition. So this is a win-win-win. I think that the other thing to mention, this whole issue about the critical rich minerals that we use for our iPhone, that we need to, all these laptops, all this
auto industry.
Yes, right. They have 43 of the 50 critical minerals on Greenland. They also have 52 billion barrels of oil, 3% of the world's reserves. Did anybody know this?
Yeah.
I bet if we asked a trivia question in any school in Canada or the United States, nobody would get it right. But the truth is, there's something worthwhile here. So he can't really acquire it by force. That doesn't work. But certainly the idea of working, even a treaty with Greenland, America already has this Pitufic space base to give America more strategic impact. This is also good for Canada. As far as Panama is concerned, that's a sticky wicket. I think that's very problematic. President Carter gave it back to the Panamanians. Why did he do that? Why did Carter do some things that he did? In many respects, he's highly respected, mostly for what he did after he left the presidency. But his action that gives Panama back to the Panamanians turns out to be a boondoggle. And are we going to be able to get it back? The problem in Panama is that Chinese companies control both the entrance and exit and other influences in Panama. And the United States, if it got into a crisis with China, China could then close the canal. And that is absolutely frightening for the United States and also for trade, which would affect Canada and the United States and South America. So these points that Trump makes, when you dig them down and you look at them a little bit more analytically, you see that really, I hate to say this word, but there's method to this madness. There's something about it that is worthwhile talking about. And again, in the United States, the president can certainly say, I want to do this or do that, but there's a Congress, and the president is accountable to Congress. Certainly, in the idea of making an acquisition of this type would require the consent of Congress. But the economist's point, not to beat it to death, but the point is, Louisiana, Alaska, everybody said, oh, yikes, crazy. Today, we're thankful we have these acquisitions. And what about the war with Mexico? And on and on and on. I mean, if we had not had these historical events, America wouldn't look the way it looks. And that also relates to how Canada looks, because it's all history. It's all historical. Our relationship together and how our borders are formulated is all a product of history. So I think Trump is onto something useful, but how to go about it is going to be very, very, very difficult, I think.
What is your reading of Mr. Fitzgerald, the Secretary of Commerce? What do you think? What kind of is he also part of the rest of the hawkish team that he has gathered? Because everybody in his team is very different. However, they are hawkish. So this Commerce Minister, Mr. Fitzgerald, what is your reading about him?
Well, I have to confess that I don't know a whole lot, but I would say that he would be one of the cabinet members that with a huge net worth. I think I'm right about that. And he has a number of billionaires and millionaires in his cabinet. So when people like that are in a cabinet and people are looking at issues, to me, I mean, as a corporate lawyer and having worked in companies, I don't think it's anathema to me. I think that provides a capability and knowledge. But again, my take on it really is that these cabinet members will be following the direction of the president. They're not freewheeling, agents. Okay. It is a cabinet. The purpose of the cabinet is to advise the president and advise the president for the president's decision making. So I think that the president had trust in Mr. Fitzgerald, Mr. Rubio, Lee Stefanik, Hegseth, you name it. Tulsi Gabbard, a number of controversial people here. Will they get through? They need the approval of the advice and consent of the Senate. But when they function in the cabinet, I think we saw this in the first Trump administration, they will be functioning basically as advisors of the president and not as freewheeling. I mean, I heard today or yesterday, Mayorkas, the Homeland Security, the head of Homeland Security, and he gave, it just shows how important it is to have very competent people in these positions. Yeah. Because take the Department of Commerce that you mentioned, or any of these departments, they are vast. In a country like the United States, these departments deal with myriads and thousands of complicated issues. So you really do need someone like an accomplished executive at the head of these agencies. So a guy like Mr. Fitzgerald is a very, well-seasoned executive. And I think that's what Trump is looking. Is he running a company? No, he runs a company, right? This guy, Trump, is the guy, who runs companies. He's the marketing guy, and he's got these people working with him, implementing his ideas. So, we had Mayor Bloomberg in New York, a businessman, and he ran the city very, very well. Again, as businessman can bring business skills to bear on government. Government's not like business. It doesn't always run as a profit. And then you bring in Mr. Musk and Mr. Ramaswamy, and they're supposed to come in and cut waste in government. So it looks like, you said a maverick before, but I think as much as Trump is a maverick, he also comes up with pragmatic solutions to seriously complicated issues. And we saw this. He's not even president yet.
Yeah.
And look at the discussion we're having.
Yeah, exactly. The discussion that we are having, and it's very interesting. He threatened last week, he said this Israel-Hamas issue should settle before I come in, and today they are saying we are about to close this deal. So yes, his threats work. But my last question... Yeah, my last question, Professor Mark, is about, because you have just mentioned Elon Musk also. Steve Bannon yesterday said that he's a very, very, evil guy. That's the word he used. He said he's a very bad guy, and I will make sure that he's not there. He doesn't stay in White House, but he's very close ally of Mr. Trump. Do you see him moving out in 6 months or falling out with Trump, or he'll be sticking around?
You know what? That's a good one. I mean, let's face it, right? Bannon was the big advisor in the beginning, right? He got into some legal troubles and other things like that. So, it's easy to, people in glass houses to throw stones. I mean, he's done like Musk is going to be out of there. He's no good. The truth of the matter is that, you cannot project how an advisor or cabinet member is going to succeed or not, and certainly Musk was a very big help to Trump to get elected. He helped him in terms of social media, but Musk is an innovator. He's a genius, and in many respects compatible with Trump, because I don't think I'm going out on a limb here to say that Trump is a political genius. Who thought he could not only win the election, win the popular vote and the electoral vote? Who thought this possible? People were thinking Kamala Harris was going to win the election. He won the election landslide. Really, it's a landslide. And, and I have to say about Musk, just as an aside, when you saw the funeral, I'm sure you saw President Carter.
Yeah.
It was Trump chummying with Obama, having chuckles with Obama. I mean, with Trump, anything is possible. With Musk,
people even asked him, "What were you talking with Obama?" He said, "We were just exchanging some pleasantries."
Well, the truth of the matter is, the New York Post had a lip reader analyze the conversation. I didn't read the whole article, but apparently the conversation was, "I have something important to talk about," and then the response Obama was, "Let's talk about it later." This is essentially what they were saying. But the thing about Musk and also Ramaswamy, I think the idea of doing this, going in and trying, which is very hard in the federal government, there are many civil servants or permanent positions and so forth, I think is such a refreshing idea to come in and look at government and what it's spending on. And even what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy came up with, they've come up with some crazy expenditures that, that are hidden in legislation. And they need to be, we can't be spending money on nonsense. We're in a crisis. We have a terrorist threat. We have immigration. And obviously we have our neighbors' relations and thousands of other issues, including the Middle East, which the point you make, I think, is very, very appropriate. He said, you better do something about this before I'm inaugurated, or all hell will break loose. What do you mean by all hell will break loose? I'm not going to tell you. Can you imagine? I mean, this is something we just are not familiar with. This kind of, it's candid, but it's just so effective that people are so afraid as what he's going to do that the world, look at Trudeau, Trudeau put tariffs on, and then Trudeau runs to Mar-a-Lago, and then 5 minutes later he's no longer in, he's out. So, there's something about that. Now, the problem why that doesn't work all the time is because we've seen that the Democrats are not invested in helping Trump succeed. We saw that today in the Hegseth hearings. They have, and we saw a number of the senators did an ad or a TV ad. They're not on board to work in a bipartisan way to help Trump. They continue to talk about him. He's a convicted felon, because that's going to be overturned on appeal anyway, that one case. He's a convicted felon, and he's horrible, and all of that. You know what? He's the president. He won the election. The American people voted for him. So the Democrats need to get on board, work together. And I would say, I don't advise Canada, but again, same issue. Get together, stop the polarization, and work for the people. And I think that was kind of Trump's mantra. That's his idea. And, hopefully that'll happen. But I'm not, after today's hearing with Hegseth, I'm not very optimistic about it, because it was such a strident hearing, the way they spoke to him, the way the Democrats spoke to him, admittedly on an issue, very controversial, women participating in combat, but they really grilled him to such an extent that, it may be his nomination will fail.
Yeah.
And that some Republicans will not, maybe some even Republican women senators will not vote for him. So
thank you very much, Dr. Mark. That was amazing. So as we say in Pakistan, Pakistan Zindabad, I am going to say for you, MAGA Zindabad. MAGA Zindabad. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm extremely grateful from the bottom of my heart. I know you were terribly busy. I actually dragged you out of your work, but you have been extremely kind and you are talking to us. So thank you for your time.
I'd love to do it again.
Yes, definitely. We'll connect soon.
To have a conversation.
Absolutely. We are going to connect once Mr. Trump, the one and only Mr. Trump comes in power. Then we are going to connect again. Thank you very much, sir. All the best. Have a good evening and bye for now.
All the best.